Hey everyone, and welcome to the Coach's Corner podcast from On Track College Advising. Today's guest is John Marovich, the head women's soccer coach at Valparaiso University. I personally have had the pleasure of knowing John for over 2 decades in our time shared at Valpo, and he's an incredibly dedicated coach with a passion for finding talented student athletes, recruiting them, and then developing these young women into individuals with strong character. And he does all this while creating a unique culture season after season at Valpo. So John, thanks so much for taking the time today and welcome to the podcast.
You're welcome, and I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So John, you've had a lot of success over the last few seasons at Valpo, bringing home the first ever regular season title for Valpo since joining the MVC and then making the NCAA tournament. With the season just around the corner, what's the outlook for this coming fall?
It's really bright. We've got a really young group this year with some good leadership and some seniors and juniors mixed in. And so it's been a great start to the season, a lot of really good training. Really enjoyed some great team activities. We're looking forward to taco night and karaoke night at my house tomorrow. But we had a great start to the season, beat DePaul 1-0 in an exhibition. Molly O'Rear had a great left footed strike from outside the box. Well, hopefully you can keep all that stuff going for the marathon that's in front of us.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a long haul for you guys. So talk us through real quick, just how long that season is. When do you guys start up your training as they're coming back into the university? And when does that season end for you guys throughout the year, assuming you have opportunities to make some postseason play?
Yeah, we start right at the end of July, beginning of August with preseason. Our first regular season game is actually August the 14th. And then we'll finish up somewhere in mid-November, all things go well. Now, in 2026, the NCAA and through our coaching organization has extended our season 1 week later and given us a 2-week acclimation period. So as we go into 26, there's very likely kids will be coming in mid-July. They'll have 2 weeks of 10 hours a week, 5 with the coaches with the soccer ball and 5 with the strength and conditioning coaches each of those weeks. So a nice acclimation period. And then the season goes 1 week longer. So the NCAA championships will be kind of like mid-December. So I think it's exciting. It gives us more chance to get our players recovered after every match. But that'll be how it will go, from after this fall season.
Sure. So you've been at Valpo for 20 plus now. What's your favorite part about coaching there, and what makes that place so special for student athletes?
I get that question a lot, and I think it really simply comes down to people and community. We work with some unbelievable people in all departments. So when I need something or I need an answer to a question, I can straight call the financial aid office or admissions. If I need help with IT, Rich Miller, he's walking that campus every day and he's right there to help you. And that's just what we get as employees, but the same as in the academic world. So Professor Paul Rowe in the business school, I go and speak at one of his data analytics classes every year because we use a lot of data analytics. And he's actually helped us create some great Excel spreadsheets and some Power BIs that we can help, read and interpret the data that we have. So it's a collaborative effort through athletics and academics and through the other parts on campus. And so it really comes down to the people. And then our student athletes, they're jumping into the classroom. Those professors, respect the work that they do. Those professors come out to games. I know the nursing professors, the business professors, engineering professors, they're all at our games. One of our former players is a professor in the biomedical engineering department. So she's done some work with some of our heart rate data in the biomedical engineering space. And so there's just a collaborative effort with everybody from the student athletes to the professors to the IT people to our athletic administration. It's just a great place to work. You obviously know the relationships that we have as coaches with other coaches, they're for a lifetime. And so I've got to see your family grow up and you got to see mine grow up. And I'd tell you, that's Valpo. To me, it's about the community and everybody that's a part of raising everybody's teams and their kids and their families. It's just been an unbelievable experience for me.
So you and I had the opportunity to hang out a little bit this past weekend, watched your daughter perform in a play. And afterward, we went out and had some appetizers and we're just talking about some things. And we were discussing your time at Valpo and how your philosophy and some of the training stuff that you've had to do over the years has had to evolve. Talk us through some of that philosophy and really share with us how that has evolved for you over your time at Valpo.
Yeah, I think what stays consistent is the purpose and the mission. And that's really to create strong, confident, powerful women. And we do that again, it takes a village to raise one person. So it takes everybody on campus to do that. And so as the game evolves, as we as coaches evolve, as our game evolves, it's now so global in the women's game now. All that's really exciting, but so do student athletes. They change, right? They're growing in different ways. Social media now is a big part of that. And then how you're engaging them in that space as well. All of those things have changed. So I've been fortunate to be around some great coaches when I was young. And then I was really fortunate to be a part of a mentorship group kind of the beginning of COVID and in through COVID. And I spent some time breaking down the college game and revamping and re-energizing our game model and how we do that. So there's a huge Spanish influence now based on some of those folks that I was, in that mentorship group with. And it was because of the women's game in the United States. That's how I got involved. But then at the same time, like, how we interact and how we grow our athletes, is how we have to meet them where they're at. And so we've done a lot of different things over the years. I know the first thing we did, we used the fish philosophy to kind of create that synergy. But now I think with the younger group that we have right now, it was really important for us to help players understand the importance of positivity. I think so much is happening in the world today that there's not a lot of positivity. I feel players are so critical because they're trying to please and they're trying to be perfect, right? And we've got to get them into a space where they can feel like they don't have to be perfect, that failure is okay. And
Yeah.
and so we've used a lot of what Kobe Bryant preaches, that failure doesn't exist, or he did preach that, through the mama mentality, that failure doesn't exist, right? You go out and try to, just do your best work. And if you do that, then failure doesn't exist because you're just trying to figure things out. I think that's really big. And so I've just loved the space where we can throw different imagery at them, different ways to engage the group. And so I've done a bunch of stuff over the 20 plus years, which means now that I'm talking to Paul Oren's class in communications because it's part of the freshman curriculum. And so I'll be talking about some of those cool things that I've done over the years. It's just fun. I think about those things and I think about the student athletes that we've impacted. And so that's what really gets me passionate and fired up about creating new and different things every year.
Great. But, one of the overarching themes that I keep hearing from coaches, and I know this from my time as well as a coach, is developing culture, right? You got to have a good team culture. And, so talk to me about the culture with the women's soccer program right now, and then maybe what you look for in a player that will be a good fit for what you already have there.
Yeah, it's a great question. And what I've heard or what we've tried to do is we've definitely tried to be player centric and coach available and approachable. And
I love
so
that.
we've really taken this idea to be uncommon. And that's consistently what I heard from players who transferred into the program or players who are here and they're hearing from some of their club mates that are at different institutions that, you can go talk to Coach John. I can be goofy, but then serious when it comes to training. It's a balance. It's a fence that we walk, as you know. But, this idea that culture is so important. I'm a big what drives winning proponent in terms of Brett Ledbetter and Becky Burley. And it really is environment because every day it's something new. There's a new challenge. You could be on a winning streak. You could be struggling, right? Like we're coming off a big result. Well, how do we get them refocused? Culture is really the culmination of what you've done every day in your environment. And so that environment to be uncommon is just, treating people with respect and trying to connect with them and build those relationships. I did it today. I'm not somebody that's on TikTok very often. I'm on there because my kids are on there and I can kind of follow along. But today I did two TikToks and I got former players, texting me going, "Coach, that was so fire." And I was like, "Okay, great." But there's a rowing thing that's out there now with the guy in the front of the boat and he makes these arm movements and the kids are rowing behind. And so I did it today and they were so excited that I did that. Right. And I think that just goes back to building those relationships because then they know that I'm human. Right. And we've talked about the positivity and I had a tough day and I wasn't as positive as I needed to be. And so I came to the group and I said, "Hey, yesterday, that was me. I fell off of where we wanted to be on the energy bus. And so it's going to be okay because I'm telling you that I had a bad day. I missed the mark, but I'm going to be better today." And so now they can feel okay if they miss the mark because they say, they see the coaches, kind of just letting them know that that's life, right? Which leads us to what we're talking about this year. And I know I shared this with you, and it's something that's really starting to grab some momentum. But we talk about like everything in society, the social media, the pressures that they have, the academic stress, right? All of those things. So I heard this through our work with John Gordon and the Energy Bus and listening to his podcast, but it's something that resonated with me and it certainly resonated with the girls for sure. But we talk about a boiling hot pot of water that is really your environment. It's life. Like life is not going to be super easy. It's not cupcakes and daisies. You're gonna get in it, right? It's gonna be hot. And you got to find a way not to let that boiling hot pot of water really affect you. But if you take a carrot and you put that carrot into a hot boiling pot of water, what happens? The carrot gets soft and it weakens. I don't think we want that, right? We want to be somebody that doesn't get soft and doesn't get weakened. But if you take an egg and you put an egg in the hot boiling pot of water, right? It hardens from the inside out. And again, do we want to be hardened where we're locked off to positivity? We're locked off to really being there for one another. We just get hardened and just kind of like go into a shell. We don't want to be either a carrot or an egg. But if you take a coffee bean and you put the coffee bean in the hot boiling pot of water, what it turns into is this wonderfully tasty drink that we all spend money at Starbucks for, Dunkin', right? And what the coffee bean does is it transcends the water into something we love to drink. And so the idea is that we want to be coffee beans. We want to go from the inside out. We want to take the inside of all of our passion, our caring and our commitment and our dedication and courage and just affect everything around us. So the egg and the carrot, they're affected and they're transformed by the environment. We want to transform the environment around us with our positivity, with our energy and our passion. So we're really striving hard this year to just be some of the best coffee beans. Now I prefer Colombian, other people like the Hawaiian, but in either case, we're trying to create some really great environment around our program. And I think that ultimately becomes culture and what the kids really enjoy.
Great. Well, our audience is going to be largely student athletes and their parents. So we need to talk a little bit about recruiting. So I'm curious what your general recruiting philosophy is. And then are you looking for players that are like technically perfect? And I think you referenced this a little bit already. Or do you prioritize like the potential or coachability? What do you look for?
We look for a lot, but I think the first thing I would just tell the student athletes is when, you got, a couple hundred coaches sitting there on the sidelines at a club event and, you're nervous and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make a mistake and I don't really necessarily look what happens with the kid. I'm looking for what that kid does well. Like, what do they do well that's going to fit into our system? And if they do make a mistake, I'm really looking at how they respond
Mm.
because we all done our sports and we've never been perfect. I've never been perfect. And so I always had to find a way to respond when something didn't quite go the way I wanted it to go. And so we're looking for kids and how they respond. We look for how they talk and treat their teammates or how they talk and treat to their coaches. And then look at what is it they do that fits our system. And then once we identify those players, we talk to club coaches, or we talk to other people that may know them. If our kids are in the same club and they might know them, and we're looking for character kids because I believe, character is going to drive that process to a really, really high level, which is going to help development, help the, individual development, team development. And then ultimately how, if we have a great process, then we're going to have a great set of results. So in order to get a great process, you need great character kids that come in that are as passionate about the game as we are, that want a great education, and then want the environment that we want. And so it comes down to fit. And I will tell you, like it does not, like if you don't have a great fit, soccer's not going to overcome that. Location isn't going to overcome that, right? So you're looking for a great fit academically, socially, and then if those two things are in place, then usually the athletic piece fits in really, really well. But what we found is players and recruits that come in and they talk to our kids. They listen to the podcast I have, which is the Uncommon Experience podcast. That's me just interviewing our players so that recruits can see like this is how kids like everything that they were fearing, those kids have lived and experienced. And
Yeah.
so now our kids are kind of giving back to the recruits what they really should be looking for and maybe some of the things that they're really worried about that maybe they don't need to worry about. Because I do think like making, the right choice in the beginning is what you want. I know like the way we see it on ESPN now and the way the the transfer portal is. It's turning it into like this really cool thing to do. It's just not. It's no fun. Those kids aren't always really enjoying it. Right, when you're jumping from one team to the next, you don't have that togetherness. You don't have that community, that sense of belonging. Right, like how many kids' weddings have you gone to that you've coached, and then you see
Yeah.
half your teams there. You don't get that if you're bouncing in for a year or two and then out. So when you find the right fit, you're inclined to stay because this is where you want to be. And that's when you're going to find your greatest success, your greatest development, and your greatest sense of pride and joy when you graduate with a degree from an institution that you find to be your perfect fit.
Great. So walk me through just the typical timeline for the recruiting process in the women's soccer world. A high school student is a freshman. What should they be doing to get on your radar? Is it too soon to get on your radar? What do you look for?
Well, it's never too soon. Just the rules prohibit us from talking to or sending an email that is considered to be a recruiting email
Mm-hmm.
before June 15th after their sophomore year. But coming to ID camps on a campus, I think is huge. We just had one at the end of July. We had a lot of 2028s and 2027s there. We had a goodly number of 26s as well. So I think ID camps are huge. Reaching out to a coach and letting them know where you're going to be, where you're going to play, what events you're at, the schedule. Because when we're at an event, we're going to go, we're going to pop in and catch some games. So I've watched 2028s, not going to lie. It feels weird because they're so young, but the reality is you have to be prepared because the 2027 class, we have offers out. We have kids waiting to make some decisions, and here we are. It's the fall of 2025. So we're recruiting 2027 right now. We're identifying 2028s. We've had even some 29s that showed up at our ID camp, which is great. But then we've also had, a player or two that maybe we picked up late in the process for 2026. So in women's soccer, it comes pretty early, fast and furious. Kids are looking at like where are the most coaches at. You're going to see that at the ECNL level and the GA level is where you're going to see the biggest number of coaches at those events. If you're not in those leagues, it's okay. You just have to really leverage, some of your bigger events, and then getting to ID camps, I think then becomes your pathway.
What advice do you give to a student who's interested in Valpo but maybe feels like they're not the top tier recruit?
Patience. We've had kids that we've offered walk-on spots to that have come in and just blown the doors off. It really comes down to fit. And there's a transition. You can never, the college game is more physical, it's faster, it's certainly more technical. So I think when you look at somebody, maybe they're a little bit more technically raw, but they're a super great athlete, they may pick it up pretty quick. So I would just say some patience and then get to ID camps. Because again, the kids that we picked up later in the process as 26s, we didn't ever connect in where they were going to be at, but we saw them at camp. Then we were able to find something here late to catch them in a game. And then the next thing you know, they're committing to us. So it's persistence and patience in that process. And then just believe in yourself.
So let's talk about visits, right? So we've got unofficial and official visits. What role did those play in the program that you run? And was you bringing those students on campus? What should they expect to experience?
Yeah, I mean, when you come in for a visit, whether it's unofficial or an unofficial visit or an official visit, I think the first visit typically people have been doing as an unofficial visit because it's somewhat easier because you're coming in and you're going to get a tour of campus, you're going to talk to admissions, you're going to, meet the players, you're going to, talk and sit down with the coaches. And I think you get a pretty good perspective. Just the way things are changing in college athletics and how early it is. Some schools aren't offering official visits until you've committed. We've kind of been selective. If we like somebody who's much further away, we're maybe a little bit more inclined to say, hey, let's try to make this an official visit to kind of help the family a little bit. But either of those visits is going to really involve tour, meeting somebody in admissions. If you want to speak to somebody in an academic department, you can, and then sitting down and having lunch and really spending some time with our players. And, if you're from further away, then it's, potentially you could stay the night with some of the players. That's happened occasionally. But I think what's more common right now is to spend that day, get an opportunity to spend time with the players, see the campus, talk to the coaches, get a feel for the community. And those are when we've had the most successful visits. And really the kids that have committed is when they say it feels like home. That's usually an indicator to me that kid's going to be somebody that's taken us very seriously and we're going to be in their top two. And a lot of times we get those kids.
I know Valpo's big on the student athlete experience. So how do you and the staff that you have help with the student academically, especially with the demands of the D1 athlete? Are there services available for these students that come in to help them with the process, to keep them on track toward graduation and all those different things that go into making sure that they have a great experience there?
Yeah, we're really blessed. Like I feel like in women's soccer, I look down and everybody's got a really good GPA. So I don't have a ton of academic stress with our group typically. But part of that is because we're recruiting a good student academically, but also Grace is in our academic services department. She has our team. She's phenomenal. She works with our kids. She helps them through any of the registration process, making sure they're on track to graduation, helps them, get tutors if they need it, keeps them on track, has follow-ups with them. So a lot of that work, it doesn't really come through me. It comes through Grace, but they also know that, we understand that there's, academic rigors, right, as they're going through it. And so we make sure that we give them the amount of time on the road. We don't take up every minute of their day. I think we found a good balance between, the soccer piece that we need, the social piece that we need, and then also the academic piece. And what I think is also uncommon at Valpo in terms of for female athletes, because we're so good in the sciences. We have engineering students, we have pre-med students, we have business students, we have nurses. We get, there's a lot of kids that will be like, oh, we talked to a coach and we can't do nursing at that school. You can do nursing at Valpo. And I
Yeah.
just think that's because, again, it's what your first question was. What do we love about Valpo? It's the people, the folks who work in the nursing department. They're amazing, right? They want to have student athletes. They know that, they're going to get a great student. So now we can practice in the afternoon and they're going to morning clinicals. If we're practicing in the morning, they're going to make sure they get an afternoon clinicals. That's a small price to pay to get a really good student in your program. And so now we can recruit nursing students. So I just think you have to ask those questions as you go through the process to find those right fits. But I think those are really, really key things as we go through that recruiting process when we identify players.
Beyond just the athletic achievements, what's one thing that you'd love to have every women's soccer player take away from their 4 years with the program?
Great. Nobody's ever asked me that question. What would they take? You know, I hope they would just look back and go, that was 4 fantastic years that we got to experience together. Remember the stories, remember those relationships, staying connected. I think that's most important. I mean, like we've won championships and those kids, they talk about the championships every once in a while, but what we're really talking about is the stories or the 11 days we spent in Iowa to win a championship and all the funny things that happened. That's what I want them to remember is the experience that they had, the relationships that they had, the bonds that they built. And when they look back on their Valpo experience, they just go, you know what? That was 4 of the best years of my life.
So, follow that up with a question for you about trying to come up with give me one specific player who embodies the values that the program has, and then talk about what the impact they've had on the team has been.
Wow,
And I have a guess who this is going to be, but I won't say it.
man,
You've had
there's
quite a
so
time there, so it's a lot to
you,
go through. But if you
there's
can come
so
up with
many,
one,
and I would feel like I would leave somebody out. But names that come to mind early on in my career, like an Aaron Murray and Emily King or a Jackie Thomas, are some names that they're just were outstanding students, great players. They transform the players around them to be better. A Jackie Kondrako or a Rita Craven, even. I mean, there's just so many. I know I'm leaving so many out. Most recently, I think, you think about, people that embody, everything. And I think Nicole Norfolk is somebody that embodies everything. She was a great student, a great teammate, ambassador to the university, has a strong faith. She definitely embodied that within our team. Right now, Molly O'Rear, very similar in that case. But there's so many, right? Like I feel like I would leave somebody out. We've just been blessed to have some incredible women that have gone on and done some just absolutely incredible things. I mean, Lindsay DeSacco is somebody that awesome personality in the nursing profession and has done amazing things. I mean, even Keegan Maris, like she was an Elite 17 winner in the Missouri Valley Conference with the highest GPA in a conference championship game. And she's killing it. There's just been so many, but it all comes back to the kids that really dive in and want that relationship with their teammates, their coaches, on and off the field. And I think that's what makes those people amazing and great to be around every single day. And I know I apologize if any of them watching. I know I left at least a dozen kids out, but that's how we've been truly blessed. I think Valpo has been blessed to have so many of those kids come through the university and do amazing things.
Well, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here today and just talk about your program and all the things that are going to come for you this fall. I hope you have just the most successful season ever ahead of you. And again, I just appreciate you taking the time here today. Guys, that's all the time that we have for the Coach's Corner and Connection here today with John Marovich for Valpo Women's Soccer. Until next time, have a great evening.
Thanks, Ryan.